And we are back once again with another video, so make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Help me reach my goal of 1,100 subscribers by the end of July. We're about 20 subscribers away, so hit that subscribe button down below. Also, make sure you like this video if you enjoy it. Comment all your thoughts and opinions down below. Also, make sure you check out the Patreon page and the website. All links are down in the description below. Now, let's make our way over to TCU's schedule. So, and one other thing, make sure that you also check out College Football Roundup. It is my second channel with American Football Network, where we talk about all sorts of different topics, college football related, and we'll have a show on there every single week as the college football season kicks off exclusively on Roundup itself. So check that out. So as we make our way over to TCU's schedule, TCU has a very interesting kind of couple of games to begin the season. You have Colorado to start off, and then Nicholls and Houston and SMU and West Virginia, Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State. Then you have a bye week, and then you play the Texas schools of Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, and then Oklahoma to finish off the year. So you do have an interesting kind of year ahead of you for TCU. Last year, obviously, a massive year for the program. You went 13-2 in the first year under Sonny Dykes, the first year in which you did not have Gary Patterson as your head coach in a very long time. I'm trying to remember the specific amount of years, but it was a really long time. And Sonny Dykes obviously took a very talented program and led them to the promised land of a national championship appearance. I know he did not win it, and it was far from a championship win. It was a big-time defeat, but TCU, they just didn't match up well when it came to Georgia. They just didn't match up well. That's all it comes down to. And unfortunately, that's kind of sometimes how it is. You just don't match up well, and it is a tough time. But I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, TCU was still in a good overall spot as a program. But this year, you got a lot of tough pieces. You only bring back 10 starters with 3 of them on offense. You do bring in a lot of transfers from Alabama, including JoJo Early Jr., Trey Sanders, and Tommy Brockenmeyer. Trey Sanders plays running back, and JoJo Early plays wide receiver, and Tommy Brockenmeyer plays tackle. So an interesting kind of combination of really, and all 3 of these, when I say all 3 of these are extremely highly talented players. Trey Sanders was the best running back in his class, according to most websites. And Tommy Brockenmeyer was one of the best tackles, if not the best tackle, according to almost all the recruiting outlets out there. So very, very highly talented players. And then JoJo Early, he was a high 4-star for most websites. So again, another player that just really performed well and shined. So now when it comes to it with the quarterback position, you do add Chance Nolan from Oregon State. He's a possible starter, but more likely what happens is Chandler Morris wins the job once again. He did have the job actually before he ended up getting injured in the Colorado game last year. So that does kind of add for an interesting setup when it comes to it. But now let's get into kind of the prediction aspect of this video. Colorado is the first game of the season, and Colorado, they have a lot of high-end players. Obviously, it is not going to be as an easy game as it was last year. You do have Shakur Sanders and Travis Hunter and Alton McCaskill and stuff like that. You have a lot of high-end players, but outside of those really high-end players, you're looking at a lack of depth. I think that TCU wins this game, and I do think they win it by a decently sizable margin, maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns. Then you have Nicholls coming to town. This is going to be a win. There should be no issue here. You should be able to get a pretty easy W. I think that TCU is in a fine shape as a program, and I don't think that you're going to have issue when it comes to playing Nicholls particularly. Sorry to any Nicholls fans out there. I think I'm saying that name right. If I am saying that name wrong, I do apologize. Then you have a road game against Houston. With this game, I am going to say it's a loss. I think that this is kind of one of those upset moments where TCU, you lost a lot of players, or it's early on in the season. You have a lot of new faces. The defense definitely should be better than it was last year. There's no doubt about that. I think that the defense should be better. But when it comes to the offense, I think it definitely could struggle. You also lost Garrett Riley, your offensive coordinator, so obviously that hurts. Excuse me. But when it comes to it, at the end of the day, I do think that Houston, being that it's a home game for them, I think that they're going to be extremely motivated to beat what is kind of Big Brother, kind of not. They are in the Big 12, and Houston is now joining the Big 12, so I think that Houston is going to get the win in that matchup there. Though I don't think you lose to all your Texas schools, I do think that you do beat SMU. I think that that should be a win there for the Horned Frogs. SMU, obviously, many of you TCU fans know this. Sonny Dykes was the prior coach at SMU before he came to TCU. I think he'll have a lot riding on this game, a lot of emotions probably for Sonny Dykes, but should be able to get the win there once again. Then you have West Virginia, and West Virginia is probably one of the worst bottom three Big 12 teams in the country this year. I think that it is going to be a tough schedule for them, and I think it is going to be a year that it's very, very possible that their head coach what's his name? Neil Brown loses his job. I think that it is very possible because I do think that West Virginia is going to struggle again this year. Then you have a road game against Iowa State. I have this game as a win. I do think that you win this game. I think that Iowa State last year, they had a lot of issues, especially on the offensive end. And I think this game was a little bit earlier on in the season where the Houston game was at, or where Colorado was at, or stuff like that. I maybe pick Iowa State, but with all the changes that is going to go on at that Iowa State program, they still bring back the same quarterback, but you lose top wide receiver, and you have a lot of pieces that you are kind of losing at TCU, but I think that overall you still have a lot of talented pieces still left. Then you have a home game against BYU. I do think that they have a loss there. I think this is kind of where the stretch of games starts to get a little bit tough. Even though BYU, they're new in the conference, I do think that this is maybe one of the games that BYU can pick off. They do have some successes when it comes to them. I think that with BYU particularly, you're looking at a team in Kalani Sitake's team that just brings a little extra to their program. They really do add a little bit of oomph when it comes to playing them. You do bring back 15 starters, including a lot of starting pieces in the trenches. You bring back a lot of your offensive and defensive line, but you also lose your quarterback and your top running back and wide receiver. So I do think that kind of makes it an interesting aspect, though. Losing the quarterback in Jared Hall and replacing him with Keaton Slovich, I don't think you lose as much there as you might have in the other scenarios. Then you play Kansas State on the road. I just don't see a pathway to winning this game. Kansas State, a great team last year, beat TCU in the Big 12 championship after losing to them earlier on in the season, with that game being at TCU, losing by a 10-point score. I think that this is a very fun game and a very fun matchup, but with it being on the road in Manhattan, Kansas, Manhattan, I think that this is going to be a loss for the Horned Frogs. Then you play Texas Tech, and I think this losing streak continues with another loss. I think Texas Tech and Joey McGuire has his program heading in the right direction. And I think that after last season, you bring back almost all of your offensive starters. You bring in one transfer starter. So I really think that this team is just ready to rip and go. The defense for Texas Tech is probably going to struggle once again. But overall, I do think that it's going to be a win there for the Red Raiders and a loss for the Horned Frogs. Then Texas, I do think that it is once again another loss. I think Texas is just a more talented team than TCU. When it comes to Quinn Ewers, you're looking at a player that just simply has the it factor in it. And I think that this year in Texas, I don't know if Texas is back, but I do think that they are going to be back in the Big 12 specifically. Then you have a home game against Baylor. Unfortunately, I am going to have you lose this game. It is a very tough stretch of games, a 5-game losing streak that I have you at currently. I think that Baylor and Dave Aranda, I think Baylor is just going to be better than TCU this year. I think TCU lost a lot of pieces last year, and I don't know how they're going to replace it completely. I do think that like Chandler Morris at quarterback is solid. I don't think you're getting as much of a downgrade, but also the simple fact that you went 7-1 in one-score games indicates to me that you're probably going to lose 2 or 3 more of those. Maybe you'll have a winning record still in one-score games, but I think it's more likely that you do end up losing a couple more of those. Then you have a road game against Oklahoma. And even though this seems a little bit weird after losing 5 straight games, I do think that you beat Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma slips up here at the end of the season. A road game against TCU as they're kind of looking ahead to bowl season. I think that a 5-win TCU team is really revving to go to try to get that bowl eligibility after making the national championship just a year prior. I think TCU finishes with a 6-6 record overall, and because of that, I know that season is probably a little bit disappointing when it comes down to it. You're looking definitely at more of an 8 or 9 win season if you're a TCU fan, but I just don't see it with all the pieces that you lost. So that's going to wrap up today's video. Hit the 2 videos down below and the subscribe button up top. And as always, have a great day. Bye, guys.